Alô, mais uma entrevista aqui no Omelete TV. O diretor Steven Soderbergh está de volta com mais um longa-metragem, agora produzido diretamente para HBO Max, que se chama No Sudden Move, ou então, como chamaram aqui no Brasil, Nem um Passo em Falso. Esse é o segundo filme que o Soderbergh faz diretamente aí com o HBO Max, depois de Let Them All Talk, um filme excelente, estrelado pela Meryl Streep. No caso de No Sudden Move, a história se passa na Detroit nos anos 50, na época do auge da indústria automobilística americana, e acompanha dois capangas aí, vividos pelo Benicio Del Toro e também pelo Don Cheadle, que são contratados a roubar aí um plano do projeto automobilístico que está movimentando todos os interesses aí na Detroit. É uma história policial aí cheia de acasos e reviravoltas, que estreou diretamente aqui na HBO Max no dia 1º de julho. Eu tive a oportunidade de conversar com o Soderbergh e a gente falou sobre muita coisa. A gente falou sobre o filme, sobre o estilo dele, a carreira dele, como ele se vê a essa altura aí do campeonato e também como é trabalhar no streaming. Veja lá. Hey, Steven.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. What's happening there? You guys still in a bad situation?
Yeah, it's not really good. I mean, we are having like 3,000 deaths a day, and it's still a mess. But the vaccination is starting to speed up, so
good.
Maybe we'll be free of this sooner than later.
I hope so.
Speaking of the pandemics, you guys shot in Detroit last year, in the middle of this mess. How was that experience?
It turned out to be really great. As you may have heard, we were shut down. We were supposed to start April 1st, and we got shut down in March because of COVID. But the good news was the industry moved very quickly to try and establish, some protocols so that we could go back to work safely. And we were able to do that. We showed up in Detroit. We had a lot of people. We took over a hotel completely and turned it into a bubble. And we got out of there without any problems. I think the path to keeping people safe is very clear. It's just not cheap. It's been frustrating to watch smaller projects, more independent projects, really suffer by not being made or having to compromise their vision by moving money that would be on screen into the safety protocols column. Smaller films have been hurt the most, but that's, as vaccinations become the norm, I think that'll change as well.
You said that the small productions, they are being hurt the most, but at the same time, we have this boom of the streaming services. Still, there's like 4 players that dominate the market, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of people. Do you feel that as well?
Oh my God, this is the best time ever to be a person who makes things, because there's so many buyers out there and they want material. There's a lot of Wild West feeling about the business right now. Whenever I've seen that in the past, it means that we're in a cycle and that at some point there will be a correction in the other direction. But right now it feels very much like these companies just want as much content as they can get, and particularly, and this is why we're talking, they attempt to grow their global audience. So I'm very curious about the next 3 years to see if I don't think this level of production can be sustained, not just financially, but the bottom line is there just aren't enough people who are really good at their jobs to work on all of these shows. I mean, I hear stories of people being given shows to produce or write, they are not ready to step up to this level, and there are problems. Hearing this a lot from people, and the executives at some of these companies, the company will come in and say, we want to ramp up, production by 30%, but they don't increase their staff by 30%. And so these people are now getting burned out. So that's why I'm curious to see, 2 or 3 years from now, whether or not there's a leveling off of production, because I don't know how you keep things going at this level. I really don't.
And you've been making movies for 30 some years. And what's your contribution you think you could give to the industry as a whole in this new environment? Because you've been through a lot, right? And you saw a lot. So what's your contribution you given to the industry and to new filmmakers?
Yeah, look, there are only a couple of ways in which I can have any influence. One on the purely professional side was the 2 decades or so that I was intensely involved with the Directors Guild of America. Initially as one of the founders of the Independent Directors Committee, and then I was on the council, then I was on the board, and then I was the vice president. And I dedicated a lot of time to really pushing the idea of the director as the central creative force of a project, trying to protect our creative rights, trying to negotiate better economic rights. So there was that track that I was on. And then fairly early on in my career, 1993, I think, with Suture, the Siegel and McGehee film, I've tried to help other young filmmakers, either directly or indirectly, by being a producer on their projects or turning them on to people who I think would want to produce their projects. Like I've tried to have a side hustle in helping young filmmakers and supporting young filmmakers, going to film schools to speak, and just trying to download what I've learned about filmmaking in the hopes that there's, some kind of guidance through experience that I can transmit. I can't control if somebody's talented or not, but I can talk to them about craft. You can teach somebody craft. The art of it all is how you use the craft in a surprising way. So their soul is not really my problem. I can teach them some visual grammar that they can then build on. So that's fun to do.
What I see in your movies, not just the movies you do as a director, but also as editor and cinematographer, is that you are very interested in craft and maybe learning, I feel, new tools. I can see this a lot in the cinematography when you did Unsane with iPhones. And now in this new movie, could you talk a little bit about this? What makes you tick? I mean, in terms of craft?
Well, I've said before, and it's really true, that there has to be some aspect of the project that makes me terrified, that makes me nervous, that I wonder if we will be able to execute properly. And in the case of No Sudden Move, there were a few challenges. One was just the visual approach to the film, how to connect it to, the films of that period, but yet give it a feeling that's modern so that a contemporary audience doesn't feel like they're staring at a painting that was painted 60 years ago. And then there's the issue in a film like this of the tone, of the emotional tone of the piece, and making sure that it doesn't become too heavy or too comic. And then the most important probably is the narrative and creating clarity without the audience being able to predict what is coming. And that's really difficult because it's hard to judge until people have seen it. It's hard to judge what information is landing and what information is not landing and what order people should receive this information. So in the case of No Sudden Move, in the middle of the film, there was some restructuring that went on because I had some friends watching the film saying, I sort of drift from this point to this point, and then I get back on track here. And I realized it was because there was a structural problem and they didn't have the information they needed early enough to engage with this late second act material. So I did some shuffling, and that seemed to solve that problem. But you only learn by showing it to your friends and having them tell you when they think something's wrong.
You have Don Cheadle and you have Matt Damon, and I think that people will remember of this Ocean's 11 scenario. And I wanted to know, do you feel some kind of nostalgia for Ocean's that time? How was that reunion?
I love reconnecting with people that I've worked with. That's always a pleasure. I don't look back that often. And in this case, seeing Don, seeing Benicio, who I've worked with before but hadn't worked with since Che, for me, it's less about what we did before, but about this new thing that we're going to do that's going to be different than the thing that we did before. So it is fun, though, to know people. I mean, we shot Out of Sight in 1997. It came out in 1998. So I've known Don 24 years. Like, it's really fascinating to know somebody that long, especially in this business, and to see how Don's career has evolved. And I remember having lunch with Don in Los Angeles when he was planning to make his Miles Davis movie. And I told him in no uncertain terms, do not make this film. You don't have enough money. It's too complicated. This shouldn't be your first film. Like, I was absolutely adamant that he should not do this. And then, of course, I saw the film and thought it was terrific. And of course, I was wrong and he was right. But I like having those kinds of histories to laugh about.
Okay, all right, Steven. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and be safe there. And
thanks. Yes.
By the way, it's a great movie.
Thank you so much. No, and you stay safe as well.
All right, thank you. É isso aí, esse foi o Steven Soderbergh. Pô, é sempre muito bom entrevistar gente que tem opinião forte e que sabe do que está falando. Espero que você tenha gostado também dessa entrevista. E lá no Omelete você confere a crítica do filme também. Então aproveita lá, acessa omelete.com.br e aperta aí o sininho das notificações aí para você não perder nada das nossas entrevistas de Vereditos e também do Omelete Pendrive.